I'm Aria Sinclair, 34, standing outside my brother Liam's military ceremony in my carefully concealed dress uniform. The security guard scanned his list again. Sorry, ma'am, you're not on here. I watched my family walk past, Liam smirking at my predicament, just as security moved to escort me out. Then, Commander Grayson appeared. His voice boomed through the entrance. Is there a problem? Welcome, General Aria Sinclair. My brother's jaw dropped. My parents froze. Their daughter, the desk job disappointment, was someone else entirely. If you're watching this from a military family, hit like and subscribe to see how I finally earned their respect after years of secret service. Growing up as Aria Sinclair meant living in the shadow of military men. My father, Ethan Sinclair, retired as a colonel after 30 years of distinguished service. His uniform hung pristinely in our living room, medals catching the light each morning as I ate breakfast before school. The Sinclair name carried weight on base. It meant discipline, honor, and an uncompromising dedication to country. My brother Liam, 2 years younger than me, was the natural heir to this legacy. From the moment he declared, at age 8, that he would follow in Dad's footsteps, he commanded the family's attention. While I received nods for good grades, Liam's every push-up was celebrated. His decision to attend West Point was treated like a national holiday in our household. I loved my country just as deeply, but differently. While Liam dreamed of leading men into battle like our father, I was fascinated by intelligence operations, threat analysis, and the invisible chess game of national security. When I announced my intention to join military intelligence instead of the regular forces, Dad's disappointment was palpable. Intelligence, he scoffed at dinner. That's just desk work, Aria. Support staff. The real military is out there in the field. Mom had patted my hand. It's probably for the best, honey. Women have it hard in combat roles anyway. Their perception of my career choice as somehow lesser never changed, even as I progressed through training. What they didn't understand, what I couldn't tell them due to classification protocols, was that my role would take me deeper into danger than most conventional soldiers ever experienced. As years passed, the divide grew. At family gatherings, Liam regaled everyone with sanitized versions of his deployments. Each story ended with Dad clapping him on the shoulder, pride radiating from his weathered face. Meanwhile, my work remained classified. When asked what I was doing, all I could offer were vague references to analysis and reports. Still pushing papers? Liam would ask, his tone making it clear he considered his service the real deal. Must be nice having weekends off while the rest of us are in the field. Little did he know, I hadn't had a real weekend off in years. The operations I was coordinating ran continuously, and lives hung in the balance of decisions I made daily. But because of security clearance levels, I carried these burdens alone. Mom's disappointment took a different form. At 34, I wasn't fulfilling her vision of what a daughter should be. Skylar from down the street just had her second baby, she'd mentioned during our monthly calls. And she still finds time to volunteer at church. Each family Christmas, Thanksgiving, or 4th of July barbecue became an exercise in restraint. I'd listen to Liam's combat stories, embellished for dramatic effect, while Dad nodded approvingly. I'd help Mom in the kitchen as she lamented my lack of a husband. My achievements? Commendations I couldn't mention. Operations I couldn't reference. Lives I had saved remained invisible. The distance between us grew incrementally with each passing year. I rose through the ranks quickly, my analytical skills and strategic thinking placing me on an accelerated path. By 30, I had attained a rank that would have astonished my family. But classification meant I carried this achievement silently. Liam, meanwhile, made captain and considered himself the family success story. At holiday gatherings, he'd lecture me about real sacrifice and frontline service, unaware that I'd spent the previous week extracting assets from behind enemy lines, or coordinating strikes that changed the course of conflicts. You should come watch a training exercise sometime, he once offered condescendingly. Might give you some perspective on what the military actually does, beyond those computers you stare at. I had simply smiled and said, maybe someday, swallowing the irony that I had personally authorized operations that had directly supported his unit multiple times. In fact, intelligence I had gathered once saved his entire platoon from an ambush, though he'd never know it was his sister who made the critical call. The final breaking point came 3 years ago, when I missed Dad's retirement ceremony due to an overseas operation I was commanding. Liam had called me afterward, voice tight with disapproval. He's given his whole life to this country, and you couldn't even show up? What report was so important that you abandoned your family? I couldn't tell him I was coordinating the extraction of 3 critical assets from a hostile region, an operation that saved lives and secured intelligence that would protect countless American soldiers, including, potentially, him. Instead, I absorbed his disappointment, adding it to the growing pile of misunderstandings that defined our relationship. By the time Liam's commendation ceremony appeared on the horizon, we were essentially strangers who happened to share DNA and childhood memories. My achievements remained classified. My sacrifices, invisible. My family's perception of me, frozen in time. Aria Sinclair, the daughter who couldn't quite measure up to the Sinclair military legacy. The invitation to Liam's ceremony arrived via email, forwarded by Mom with a brief note. Liam's being honored for exceptional service. Family should be there. Dad's giving a speech. No request for RSVP. Just the assumption I would attend, as the supportive sister relegated to the background, while the Sinclair men took center stage once again. I stared at the formal invitation, embossed with the Army insignia. Captain Liam Sinclair would receive the Silver Star for valor during Operation Mountain Shield. The ceremony would take place at Fort Bragg, with full military honors. My brother had indeed served with distinction, leading his men through a dangerous extraction under heavy fire. I felt genuine pride in his accomplishment, complicated by the familiar sting of being perpetually overshadowed. That evening, as I sat contemplating whether to attend the ceremony, my secure line rang. Few people had that number, and calls on it were never casual. General Sinclair. Commander Grayson's voice came crisply over the encrypted line. Commander, I replied instinctively, sitting straighter despite being alone. I understand your brother is being honored next month at Fort Bragg, he said. I blinked in surprise. Yes, sir. How did you? I'll be presiding over the ceremony, he explained. But there's something you should know. The Joint Chiefs have authorized the declassification of Operation Shadowcast. Your role as Operation Commander will be publicly recognized. My heart skipped a beat. Operation Shadowcast had been the most significant mission of my career, a complex, multifaceted intelligence campaign that dismantled a major terrorist network without a single American casualty. But like everything I'd done, it had remained buried under layers of classification, known only to those with top-level clearance. Sir, are you saying? We're awarding you the Distinguished Service Cross, General Sinclair, at the same ceremony as your brother. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being dismissed by my family, of hearing them diminish my contributions, they would now witness my recognition, on the very day meant to celebrate Liam. They don't know about this, do they? Commander Grayson asked, though he already knew the answer. Classification protocols, sir. They think I work a desk job in intelligence analysis. His chuckle held a note of understanding. Well, General, I believe they're in for quite a surprise. After we hung up, I sat in silence, the weight of what was coming settling over me. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and unease. Part of me wanted to call my parents, to prepare them, but another part, the part that had endured years of quiet dismissal, wanted to let them see the truth with their own eyes. In the weeks leading up to the ceremony, I prepared the way I did for any operation, with precision and discipline. My dress uniform was cleaned and pressed, every medal and insignia positioned according to regulation. I would arrive separately from my family, keeping up appearances until the moment of revelation. The morning of the ceremony dawned bright and clear. I drove alone to Fort Bragg, my stomach tight with anticipation. At the security checkpoint, I deliberately kept my highest insignia covered by my jacket. The young guard asked for ID, and I handed over my standard military identification, leaving my general's credentials tucked away. He scanned his list. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see an Aria Sinclair here." "I'm Captain Sinclair's sister," I explained. "Family of the honoree." The guard checked again. "I have Ethan and Victoria Sinclair and Zoe Adams Sinclair listed as family, but no Aria Sinclair." My chest tightened. Whether an administrative oversight or a deliberate exclusion, it was clear. Liam hadn't included me on the family list. Before I could respond, I saw them approaching, the whole Sinclair clan. Dad in his formal retired colonel's uniform, Mom elegantly dressed, Liam in full dress uniform with Zoe on his arm. The guards stepped aside to let them through. "Congratulations, Captain Sinclair," he said respectfully as they passed. Liam spotted me at the checkpoint. Rather than expressing concern that I was being denied entry, he offered his usual smug smirk, the one that always said, "Still not measuring up, are you?" "Problem with your paperwork, Aria," he called. Typical desk job types. Always caught up in red tape. They continued inside while I remained at the gate, the guard shifting uncomfortably beside me. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside, ma'am. We have other guests arriving." For a moment, I considered flashing my general's ID, revealing everything right there. But that would ruin the plan. Commander Grayson had arranged the surprise carefully. So I stepped aside. The old, familiar feeling of invisibility washed over me. Just as the guard was about to direct me away, a black SUV pulled up. The doors opened, and out stepped Commander Grayson, his 4-star insignia instantly commanding the attention of the entire security team. "General Sinclair," he called, striding toward me with his hand outstretched. "I was beginning to worry you wouldn't make it." The guard's eyes widened in disbelief. "Gee, General," he stammered. Commander Grayson turned to him, voice sharp. "Is there a problem letting General Sinclair into her own commendation ceremony, Corporal?" "No, sir." "Sorry, sir." The guard snapped to attention, hastily opening the gate. "My apologies, General. You weren't on my list. An oversight, I'm sure," Grayson said smoothly, offering me his arm. "Shall we, General? We have quite the surprised audience waiting for us." As we walked past the gates, I spotted my family being seated at the front of the auditorium, completely unaware of what was coming. Inside, the room buzzed with conversation. Distinguished military officials, high-ranking government leaders, and family members filled the space. Commander Grayson escorted me not to the family section, but to the front row of the VIP area, directly opposite where my parents were seated. "Your seat, General Sinclair," he said clearly, ensuring others nearby heard. Several senior officers turned in recognition. A few stepped forward to shake my hand. "Outstanding work on Shadowcast, General," a 3-star Air Force general said. "Changed the game in the region." From across the aisle, I felt Liam's gaze lock onto me. Confusion furrowed his brow. He tilted his head slightly, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. That wasn't his desk job sister anymore. I saw Dad lean toward him, whispering something, probably asking what the hell was happening. Mom, meanwhile, just stared, her usual polite smile frozen in place. They had no idea, but they were about to. She watched officers, many of them twice her husband's rank, treat me as a peer. The ceremony began with the traditional posting of colors and the national anthem. As the official proceedings got underway, my focus drifted to moments in time, specific slights that had quietly shaped our family dynamic. Liam, at my college graduation. Intelligence analysis? So basically, you'll be reading reports while real soldiers do the fighting. Dad, after my first promotion. That's nice, honey. Of course, advancement comes easier in support roles, less competition. Mom, just last Christmas. It's such a shame your job keeps you so busy. You're missing your chance to start a family. You know biological clocks don't care about careers. Each memory still stung. But today, they took on a different context. Their dismissals had been built on incomplete information, unnecessary secrecy that had cost me my family's respect, but had served my country in ways they could never comprehend. The regional commander stepped onto the stage and began the awards presentation. The minor commendations came first, Bronze Stars, Meritorious Service Medals, and various others recognizing acts of dedication and service. Then came the moment for Liam's recognition. He stood when his name was called, walking confidently to the stage, shoulders squared, posture flawless. A man who had never questioned whether he belonged. Captain Liam Sinclair, the regional commander, announced, for extraordinary heroism while engaged in military operations against hostile forces, we award you the Silver Star. The citation detailed how Liam had led his platoon through an intense firefight to extract endangered civilians, maintaining composure under pressure and ensuring zero casualties, despite sustaining injuries himself. It was genuinely impressive service. It deserved to be honored. Liam accepted the medal with practiced humility that couldn't quite mask the pride in his eyes. He stepped to the microphone for his speech. This honor belongs not just to me, but to the brave men who served under my command, he began. Their courage and dedication made our mission possible. He thanked his commanding officers, his fellow soldiers, and then shifted to personal acknowledgments. To my father, retired Colonel Ethan Sinclair, whose example of service and sacrifice has guided my military career. Everything I am as a soldier, I learned from him. Dad beamed, his chest puffed with pride. To my mother, Victoria, whose strength as a military wife and mother taught me resilience. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her expression soft with emotion. And to my wife, Zoe, whose support never wavered, even during my longest deployments. Zoe smiled warmly from her seat beside my parents. I waited. For a moment. A name. A mention. Something. But Liam concluded his speech without even a passing acknowledgement of me, not a to my sister, not a glance in my direction. It shouldn't have hurt. After years of distance, it should have felt familiar. But somehow, the public omission cut deeper than any of our private estrangements ever had. Liam returned to his seat to thunderous applause, shaking hands as he passed through the rows. He never once looked in my direction. As the applause faded, Commander Grayson took the stage. His very presence drew the room into silence. Before we conclude today's ceremony, he said, his voice resonant and steady, we have one final, and perhaps the most important, recognition to present. The audience straightened in their seats. A final award, after a Silver Star? That meant something significant. Few among us serve in capacities where their greatest achievements must remain unknown, even to those closest to them, he continued. Where years of sacrifice and extraordinary heroism go unrecognized due to the classified nature of their work. My heart began to pound. Commander Grayson's eyes found me in the crowd. Today, with the declassification of Operation Shadowcast, we have the rare privilege of publicly acknowledging one such individual. From the corner of my eye, I could see my family exchange puzzled glances. This hadn't been in the program they received. Ladies and gentlemen, Grayson's voice rose with formal gravity. It is my distinct honor to invite to the stage the commanding officer of Operation Shadowcast, the architect of one of the most successful counterterrorism operations in our nation's history. He paused, just long enough to let the weight of the moment settle, and then turned deliberately toward my family. General Aria Sinclair. I heard Liam whisper, stunned. Who's she? I stood. The auditorium erupted. Applause thundered through the room. Military personnel rose instantly to their feet, a wave of respect rippling from the front to the very back of the hall. These were people who understood what Operation Shadowcast meant, the risks, the complexity, the lives saved. Only my family remained seated, stunned, unmoving. I walked toward the stage slowly, deliberately, each step firm. The walk of someone who had commanded missions that would never make headlines. Liam's eyes followed me, his expression shifting rapidly, confusion, disbelief, and finally, something approaching fear. Commander Grayson stood at the center of the stage, holding a small velvet case, the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration for extraordinary heroism in combat. As I reached the podium, the applause had not yet quieted. General Aria Sinclair, Grayson began as the room finally settled, has served her country with extraordinary distinction for 15 years. rising through the ranks to become the youngest woman in history to achieve the rank of Brigadier General in the United States Army. I stood at parade rest, my posture composed, despite the storm of emotion beneath the surface. From my position, I could see their faces. Dad's mouth slightly open in disbelief. Mom, white-knuckling her purse. Liam, his face flushed crimson. For security reasons, much of General Sinclair's service record remains classified, Grayson continued, but today, we can publicly acknowledge her leadership as the commanding officer of Operation Shadowcast, a complex counterterrorism initiative that successfully dismantled the al-Rashid network without a single American casualty. As the words echoed through the hall, my mind flashed back, not to the glory but the weight. The decisions made in darkness. The lives on the line. The silence that followed every success. And now, finally, a name. A truth. A legacy unveiled. 3 years of painstaking intelligence work. Sleepless nights coordinating assets across 11 countries. The ever-present weight of knowing that one miscalculation could cost not only the lives of my operatives, but potentially thousands of civilians. The isolation of command was amplified by the classification level that prevented me from sharing my burden with anyone outside the operation. General Sinclair personally coordinated the extraction of key intelligence assets from hostile territory, Commander Grayson continued, often placing herself in direct danger to ensure mission success. What he couldn't say aloud, what would remain unspoken, was that I had been on the ground for the most critical phase of the operation. When our primary asset was compromised, I'd made the call to go in myself, unwilling to risk sending another operative who lacked my language fluency and knowledge of the region. The scar on my left side, hidden beneath my uniform, was a permanent reminder of how close that extraction came to failure. Her strategic planning and decisive leadership, Grayson said, directly prevented 3 major terrorist attacks on American soil and saved an estimated 5,000 lives, military and civilian alike. In the audience, my father's expression shifted from frozen shock to something more complicated, a dawning recognition laced with what looked a lot like shame. Beside him, my mother had begun to cry silently, one hand over her mouth. Liam just stared. The color had drained from his face completely. For extraordinary heroism while engaged in military operations involving conflict with hostile forces, Commander Grayson declared, his voice clear and formal. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Distinguished Service Cross to Brigadier General Aria Sinclair. He opened the velvet-lined case, revealing the bronze cross with the eagle at its center, suspended from a blue ribbon edged with red and white. As he pinned it to my uniform, joining the rows of ribbons and medals I had earned but rarely worn, he lowered his voice slightly, just for me. Well deserved. Long overdue, General. I stepped toward the podium, fully aware that every eye in the room was on me, none more intense than those of my family. Thank you, Commander Grayson. My voice was steady, professional. This honor recognizes not only my contribution, I began, but the dedication and sacrifice of every intelligence officer, analyst, and operative who served under my command during Operation Shadowcast. Their courage and commitment, often undertaken in complete anonymity, exemplify the highest traditions of military service. I still hadn't looked at my family. Not yet. In intelligence work, we understand that recognition is rarely public, I continued. Our greatest achievements remain classified. Our contributions known only to a select few. We serve knowing that our names may never appear in history books, that our families may never fully understand the nature of our sacrifice. Now, I allowed myself to meet Liam's gaze briefly. But we serve nonetheless. Alongside our brothers and sisters in every branch of the military, united in our commitment to protect this nation and its people. This medal I receive today belongs to all who serve, whether on the front lines or in the shadows. As I concluded, the audience once again rose in applause. This time I noticed something else. My father, standing slowly, then gently helping my mother to her feet. Only Liam remained seated, his expression unreadable. Commander Grayson returned to the microphone to formally conclude the ceremony, but my attention had narrowed to what was inevitable, the reckoning that would follow. After years of dismissal, of being underestimated, my family was now seeing me not as they once imagined, but as I truly was. Their worldview had just shifted, and I knew from experience that seismic shifts never happened without resistance. As the audience began to file out, I was surrounded by senior officers and dignitaries offering handshakes and congratulations. Each one delayed the confrontation I knew was coming, placing a symbolic buffer between me and the three people who mattered most. Through the crowd, I caught a glimpse of Liam still seated, staring at the empty stage. My parents stood nearby, unsure whether to approach, visibly out of place among the wall of generals and officials around me. The public revelation was over, but the real reckoning, that was still coming. The reception was held in an adjacent hall, transformed with white linens, subtle military decor, and muted elegance befitting the occasion. I moved through the room, accepting congratulations from colleagues, many of whom had known the truth about Shadowcast for years, though they had never been able to say so aloud. "Outstanding work, General Sinclair," said the Army Chief of Staff, shaking my hand firmly. "The intelligence community has been singing your praises for years. It's about time the rest of us could join in." I thanked him, maintaining the composure expected of my rank while subtly scanning the room. I finally spotted my family by the entrance, Dad looking unusually stiff, Mom holding her purse as if it were armor, and Liam. His face was set in those hard lines I recognized from every childhood fight, every unresolved argument. I excused myself from a conversation with the Secretary of Defense and watched as they began moving toward me. Liam in the lead, his silver star gleaming on his chest, his posture tense with purpose. I braced myself. This confrontation had been building for decades. "General Sinclair," Liam said when he reached me, his voice raised just enough to draw attention from the surrounding crowd. The formal address dripped with bitterness. "Or should I still call you Aria? I'm not sure I know who you are anymore." "Liam," I replied calmly, "congratulations on your silver star. Your service was exemplary." "Don't do that," he snapped, stepping closer. "Don't talk to me like I'm just another officer. We grew up in the same house. You're my sister, who apparently has been lying to me for my entire adult life." Dad placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Son, this isn't the place." "When would be the place, Dad?" Liam snapped, shrugging off the steadying hand on his shoulder. "When she disappears again behind whatever classified curtain she's been hiding behind. When she goes back to pretending she's just pushing papers while secretly commanding operations." Mom stepped forward, her eyes red and watery. "Aria, how could you not tell us? We're your family." I took a slow breath, aware of the attention we were drawing from the surrounding crowd. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," I said calmly. "Why?" Liam countered, voice rising again. "Secrecy seems to be your specialty. Why change now?" Before I could respond, Commander Grayson appeared beside me. His presence immediately altered the dynamic. "Captain Sinclair," he addressed Liam, his tone quiet but firm, "I believe your sister suggested a private venue for a family discussion. That seems appropriate, doesn't it?" Liam instinctively straightened at the command in Grayson's voice. "Yes, sir." Grayson gestured toward a small conference room just off the main reception area. "You're welcome to use that space, General Sinclair." I gave him a grateful nod. "Thank you, Commander." As we walked toward the room, the tension between us was palpable, especially from Liam, whose frustration radiated like heat. Once the door closed behind us, he didn't wait a second. 15 years, Aria." His voice cracked. 15 years of letting us think you were some mid-level analyst. Letting us believe you were just supporting real soldiers, like me and Dad. He shook his head, jaw clenched. "Do you have any idea how many times I talked down to you about your service? How many times I assumed I was doing something more important than you?" "I couldn't tell you, Liam," I said evenly. "It wasn't personal. Everything I worked on was classified at the highest levels." He scoffed. "You could have given us some idea. You let me believe I was the successful one. the one continuing the Sinclair military legacy. He paused, the weight of his realization settling in. Meanwhile, you were what? Running covert operations? Commanding intelligence missions? Becoming a general? Dad stepped forward slowly, his face a mixture of pride, confusion, and disbelief. Aria, help us understand. All these years we thought. You thought I could measure up. I finished, the words sharper than I intended. And you made that clear the moment I chose intelligence over infantry. That's not fair, Mom said weakly. Isn't it? I asked, meeting each of their eyes. Dad, you called my work desk duty. Liam, you've made years of condescending comments about me pushing papers while real soldiers did the fighting. And you, Mom, you treated my career like a delay. Something getting in the way of my real purpose. Marriage and children. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken truths. We didn't know, Dad said quietly at last. You didn't need to know the classified details to respect my choice of service, I replied. You just had to trust that what I was doing mattered. Instead, you assumed that because I wasn't in combat, my contribution was somehow lesser. Liam paced the room, his silver star glinting with each step. So, every time I told you about my deployments or promotions, you were, what? Silently outranking me? Running missions that probably made mine look like training exercises. That's not how I saw it, Liam. Then how did you see it? He demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were content to let your family believe a lie while you built some secret career we knew nothing about. I followed classification protocols, I said, steady but firm. Every operation I led was under the highest security clearance. Talking about my work even vaguely could have compromised missions and lives. We're your family, Liam said, raising his voice again. Not some security threat. Operational security doesn't make exceptions for family, I countered. You know that. Or would you have broken protocol to tell Mom and Dad the classified details of your missions? He faltered, silent now, because we both knew the answer. Dad exhaled and sank heavily into a chair. All this time, we thought you were stuck in some admin post. I even tried to pull strings. Get you transferred to something more prestigious. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, the retired colonel, believing his daughter needed his help to advance, unaware I'd already surpassed his final rank. I appreciate the intention, Dad, I said gently, even if it wasn't necessary. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. But why let us believe you were less than you are? You could have told us something. At least your rank, your promotions. Would it have mattered? I asked softly. Or would you still have seen me as someone who took the wrong path? The one that didn't count as real military service? The question hit home. The uncomfortable silence that followed was confirmation enough. Liam finally broke it, his tone quieter now, though still tense. You let me make a fool of myself. All those lectures I gave you about real service, you could have said something. Anything. And what would that have accomplished, Liam? I asked. Would you have suddenly respected intelligence work because I outranked you? Or would you have resented me for it? He had no response. The silence was answer enough. I made peace with your perception of me a long time ago, I continued. I served knowing the recognition I valued most would never come from my family. I found other measures of success, other sources of validation. So, why even come today? Liam asked. If you'd made peace with us not knowing, why allow this public revelation? I met his eyes directly. Because the declassification of Operation Shadowcast was my decision. And once I knew it would be acknowledged at your ceremony, I had a choice. Either avoid the event entirely or be present for the inevitable moment. When you learned the truth, you chose public humiliation, Liam said bitterly. I chose to finally be seen for who I really am, I corrected him calmly. After 15 years of hiding in plain sight, I chose to stop diminishing myself just to protect your ego. The bluntness of my words left him momentarily speechless. Dad rose from his chair and stepped toward me, his expression unsure, an emotion I'd rarely seen on his face. Aria, I don't know what to say. I'm proud of your accomplishments. Of course I am. But I'm ashamed you felt you couldn't share even the parts that weren't classified. That I made you feel like your service was somehow less valuable. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from my father, a man whose military composure rarely made room for admitting fault. "Thank you, Dad," I said simply. Mom joined him, reaching out and taking my hand in hers. Her eyes were damp. "All this time, we thought we knew our daughter. But you've been carrying so much alone." Liam remained where he was, withdrawn, visibly struggling with the collapse of everything he believed about me and us. "I just need to know one thing," he said finally. "All these years, when I was talking down to you, did you ever laugh at me behind my back?" His voice cracked. That question revealed the heart of it. His fear wasn't just that I had outranked him or achieved more, but that I'd secretly held him in contempt for not knowing. "No, Liam," I said truthfully. "I was doing my job. You were doing yours. Your accomplishments are still yours. My rank doesn't erase them, or what you've done." He nodded slowly, not fully at peace, but listening. Then came a knock at the door. Commander Grayson stepped inside. "Apologies for the interruption. The Secretary of Defense would like a word with General Sinclair before his departure." "Thank you, Commander. I'll be right there," I replied, relieved for the brief reprieve. As I turned to leave, Liam's voice stopped me. "This conversation isn't over, Aria." I looked back at my family, my father, trying to reconcile the daughter he once underestimated with the general standing before him, my mother, overwhelmed by 15 years of revelation, and Liam, grappling with the uncomfortable truth of who I had always been. "No," I agreed softly. "It's just beginning." I rejoined the reception, slipping seamlessly back into the poised persona expected of my rank. The Secretary of Defense was gracious, complimenting Operation Shadowcast and citing my innovative interagency coordination, a diplomatic nod to how I'd gotten notoriously territorial intelligence branches to work together. I responded professionally, though part of my focus stayed with my family's presence across the room. I saw Liam head straight for the bar, while my parents lingered at the edge of the gathering, uncertain where they belonged in this version of my world. After finishing my conversation with the secretary, I was quickly drawn into others. Senior officers, NATO officials. Each one offered respect, shaking my hand or congratulating me, gestures that only deepened the contrast between how I was perceived professionally and how my family had seen me for years. Eventually, I excused myself to get a glass of water. For a brief moment, I stood alone. Then Liam appeared beside me, drink in hand, his expression taut with restraint. "Your admirers seem very impressed, General," he said, bitterness sharpening the word. "Liam, this isn't the place to keep having this conversation." "No? Seems like the perfect place. All these people who apparently know my sister better than her own family ever did." His voice had risen slightly, earning a few glances. I recognized the signs. Liam had always processed pain through anger, and once that fuse lit, it was only a matter of time before his volume escalated. "Let's step outside," I said quietly.
"Why?"
"Afraid I'll embarrass you in front of your important friends," he snapped. "The great General Sinclair, too important for her family to know who she really is." Commander Grayson stepped up, his timing impeccable. "Everything all right here?" he asked, calm but firm. "Fine, sir," I replied automatically. "Oh, everything's perfect, Commander," Liam said, laughing harshly. "Just having a chat with my sister. About loyalty or a lack of it." Commander Grayson kept his expression neutral, but his eyes took in everything with practiced precision. "Captain Sinclair, perhaps you'd like to get some air. The garden is quite pleasant this time of evening." It wasn't a suggestion. Liam recognized the tone and bristled, but set down his half-empty glass and stalked toward the exit. Grayson gave me a small nod, his quiet way of defusing what could have been a very public family meltdown. I followed Liam out. The garden was quiet, its stone benches dappled with the last light of evening. A few moments later, our parents appeared, having seen us leave and followed. Unintended or not, it had become a full family confrontation. "Go ahead, Aria," Liam said, turning to face me. Explain why you let your family believe a lie for 15 years. It wasn't a lie, I said, steady. It was operational security. Everything I worked on was classified. I couldn't discuss my role, my missions, even my rank. Liam's control finally broke. You could have told us something. Anything other than letting us think you were a minor analyst while you were commanding operations. Liam, Dad interjected, placing a hand on his shoulder. Lower your voice. Why should I? Liam snapped. Why should she get to hide everything behind some classified wall and then show up here like a decorated hero, expecting us to fall in line? Liam shrugged off Dad's hand. She let you think she was a disappointment. She let all of us believe she couldn't live up to the Sinclair name, while all along, she was becoming a damn general. The raw hurt in his voice pierced through my professional detachment. This wasn't just about bruised pride. It was about betrayal, feeling deceived by someone he trusted. I followed the protocols I was bound by. I said more gently this time. But you're right. I could have pushed back harder when you diminished my service. I could have corrected you when you acted like intelligence work was just pushing papers. Then why didn't you? Mom asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Her question lingered in the air, demanding an answer I'd avoided even in my own mind. It wasn't just about classification, because after a while it was easier. I admitted, the words coming slowly but honestly. It was easier to let you believe what you wanted about me than to constantly defend the value of what I did. Every time I came home, I had to listen to stories about the real military, Dad's combat years, Liam's deployments, while what I did was dismissed as administrative support at best. I looked at each of them in turn. Do you know what it's like to lead an operation that saves hundreds of lives, then come home for Christmas and be asked when you're going to find a more meaningful position? To be told your brother's work matters more just because he carries a rifle, while the intelligence that keeps him alive is ignored. That landed hardest on Dad. He sat down heavily on a nearby bench, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. I never realized, he murmured, then stopped, uncharacteristically at a loss for words. No, I said. You didn't. None of you did. And eventually, I stopped expecting you to. I found my validation elsewhere, from my team, from my superiors, from the missions we pulled off that no one ever got to know about. Liam's anger had started to fade, replaced with something more introspective. All those times I talked down to you about your service. Yes, I said quietly. He let out a breath and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our childhood. It always meant he realized he'd crossed a line. I've been an ass, haven't I? The bluntness surprised a small laugh out of me. At times. Mom stepped forward, her movements cautious, as though she was only now beginning to truly see me. I don't understand why you couldn't at least tell me, she said. Mother to daughter. Not for public gossip. Mom, I said gently, you tell everyone everything. Remember when Dad told you he was thinking about retiring and asked you not to say anything yet? By lunch, the entire Officers' Wives Association was talking about it. She looked sheepish. I'm not that bad. You really are, Dad and Liam said in unison, surprising a light chuckle from all of us. The tension eased slightly, the edges of years-long resentment beginning to dull. Commander Grayson appeared at the garden entrance. General Sinclair, my apologies, but you have a secure call waiting. I gave a small nod. I'll be right there. As he retreated, my family stood facing me, new understanding reflected in their eyes. You have to go, Dad said, not as a question, but as an acknowledgement. I do, I said. But this conversation isn't over. I looked at all three of them. If you're willing, I'd like to try again. Not as the version of me you imagined, but as who I really am. Liam stepped forward. His posture straightened, the ingrained discipline of a soldier. I owe you an apology, Aria. A lot of them, actually. We all do, Dad added, rising to stand beside him. Mom reached for my hand again. I want a chance to get to know my daughter. The real one, not the version we created in your absence. For the first time in years, I felt a connection, not based on their expectations or assumptions, but on something real. Something new. I'd like that too, I said. As I turned to go, Liam called out after me, General Sinclair. I paused, surprised by the formal address. He raised his hand and gave me a sharp, proper salute. Military perfect. It's an honor to serve in the same military as you, ma'am. I returned the salute with equal precision, masking the emotion that surged behind my composed expression. The honor is mutual, Captain Sinclair. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement, recognition of who I was. Something I had stopped hoping for years ago. As I walked back toward the reception to take the secure call, I realized the weight I had carried for so long wasn't just the burden of classified work. It was the ache of being unseen by the people who should have known me best. For the first time in 15 years, that burden felt lighter. 6 months later, I sat in my parents' living room as Dad adjusted a new display on the wall that once only featured his and Liam's military achievements. Now, at the center, was a framed photo of me receiving the Distinguished Service Cross and the medal itself mounted below. Centered, Dad asked, stepping back to inspect his work. It looks perfect, Mom answered before I could, entering with a tray of coffee. Our family service was finally represented. All of it. The past 6 months had been a slow, cautious rebuild. After the shock of the ceremony, we'd all needed time to recalibrate. Liam had returned to duty, silver star on his chest, and with a humbled understanding of the years he had misjudged me. Mom and Dad had started what she now called getting to know our actual daughter, a process that meant asking questions they'd never asked before, and more importantly, listening to the answers. As for me, I was still serving. But for the first time, I was doing it without needing to hide who I was from the people who mattered most. I was learning how to share pieces of my work without compromising national security. The declassification of Operation Shadowcast had opened doors that were once sealed shut, allowing me to explain enough to begin closing the gap between my career and my family's understanding of it. The decorator suggested grouping all the medals together, Mom said as she settled beside me on the couch. But I told her, absolutely not. Each of you earned those honors individually. They deserve their own space. It was still surreal hearing Victoria Sinclair speak about my service with the same reverence she'd always reserved for the men in the family. The shift hadn't happened overnight. Sometimes, she still slipped, asking about my dating life with more enthusiasm than my recent assignment in Eastern Europe. But she was trying, and that meant more than she could possibly know. Liam arrived shortly after, his wife Zoe on his arm. Their dynamic had changed too. She had been almost hilariously horrified to realize she'd been casually condescending to a brigadier general at family gatherings, asking if I liked my little office job, while proudly supporting her husband's real military career. General Sinclair, Liam greeted with his now familiar half-serious, half-teasing salute. Captain, I returned with equal parts formality and affection. Zoe hugged me tightly and whispered, I'm still mortified about all the times I tried to set you up with my cousin because I thought you needed something more fulfilling than your job. I laughed, genuinely amused this time, not wounded. To be fair, your cousin's a doctor. That's a solid catch. Yes, but he only talks about golf. You'd have lost interest before the appetizers. This easy rhythm between us was new, built not on assumptions but reality. Built on me. Dad called us to the dining room, where he'd grilled his signature steaks to perfection, an old habit from decades of military-hosted cookouts. As we gathered around the table, I noticed the subtle change. Liam was no longer automatically the focus. We were equals now, different branches, different ranks, but all respected in our own right. I spoke with Commander Grayson yesterday, Dad said as he plated the food. He mentioned the expansion of your division was approved? It was, I confirmed. We're integrating enhanced cybersecurity protocols across field operations. Aria's team designed the framework being adopted across multiple intelligence branches, Liam added, with a surprising note of pride that would have been unthinkable just 7 months ago. Mom raised her glass. To the Sinclair family tradition of service, in all its forms. We clinked glasses. A simple toast, but it signaled a broader, deeper understanding than had ever existed in this house before. After dinner, Liam and I found ourselves alone on the back porch, watching the sunset stain the sky in gold and coral. "I've been thinking," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about how I saw you and who you actually were." "And?" I asked, curious. "I realized something I'm not exactly proud of." He turned to face me fully. "My dismissal of your work, it wasn't really about you. It was about me. About keeping my place in the family. If I admitted your path mattered as much as mine, then I wasn't the golden one anymore. I wasn't the heir to Dad's legacy. I was just another Sinclair in uniform." His honesty caught me off guard, but pleasantly so. "That's incredibly self-aware, Liam." He chuckled. "Therapy. Zoe's idea." After the ceremony, she said I had some pretty outdated assumptions about military service and about gender roles. "She's right," I said. "And smart. You married well." She also pointed out something I'd never considered. He looked back toward the horizon. "That maybe you chose intelligence not to avoid combat, but because you were better suited for it. That maybe strategy and analysis were your strength, and following Dad's path would have been the wrong choice for you." I smiled. "She's definitely right." "I get that now," he said. "Took a Distinguished Service Cross and a public reveal of your actual rank to get it through my thick skull, but I get it." We both laughed, the sound drifting into the night. Inside, I caught a glimpse of Mom showing Zoe old photo albums, probably filled with embarrassing childhood moments, and Dad pouring post-dinner drinks with practiced efficiency. This was my family. Still imperfect, still stubborn, but finally seeing me clearly. For years, I had carried two heavy weights, the burden of secrecy and the deeper ache of being misunderstood by the people who mattered most. I had learned to find validation elsewhere, to measure my worth against outcomes, not opinions. It had cost me something, a distance I couldn't bridge while my truth stayed hidden. But it also gave me a sense of identity, of self-worth, that was wholly my own. "You know what's strange?" I said, eyes still on the darkening sky. "In a way, I'm grateful you all underestimated me for so long." Liam raised an eyebrow. "Grateful?" I nodded. "If you'd seen me clearly back then, I might have started measuring myself by your expectations instead of my own. Your dismissal pushed me to define my value in my own terms. It forced me to become someone who didn't need approval to succeed." He studied me for a long moment, then offered a slow, sincere nod. "You really are the better Sinclair," he said. I grinned. "I won't argue. Honestly, it forced me to define myself by my own standards, not by how others saw me," I said. "When I couldn't rely on external validation, I had to learn how to generate it from within. And that's a powerful thing to carry." "Still sounds like we were just jerks," Liam replied bluntly. I laughed. "Oh, you definitely were. But it made me more self-reliant, more certain of my path, even when it wasn't understood or valued by the people whose opinions mattered most to me." Liam mulled that over. "I don't know if I could have done what you did," he admitted. "I needed Dad's approval too much. I don't think I could have stayed the course if he dismissed my choices." "We've always been different that way," I said gently. "And that's okay." We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky shift from burnt orange to soft blue as the sun dipped below the horizon. "Aria," Liam said quietly, "I'm proud to be your brother." Those simple words carried the weight of years, misunderstandings finally cleared, assumptions dismantled. "I'm proud to be your sister," I replied, meaning it more than he probably knew. As darkness settled around us, we returned inside. The conversation flowed more naturally than it ever had, moving easily between family memories, military life, and future plans. For the first time, my perspective was part of that rhythm, not an afterthought or a polite pause, but fully integrated into the conversation. Later that night, as I drove home, I found myself reflecting on the long arc that had brought me here. Without Operation Shadowcast's declassification, I might have spent the rest of my life split between two realities, General Sinclair in one, and someone diminished in the eyes of her family in the other. But this wasn't just about public recognition or medals. The ceremony had forced a reckoning, yes, But the more powerful transformation had come in the aftermath. It was about authenticity, about being seen, finally, for who I truly was, not who others had assumed or hoped me to be. For years, I told myself their approval didn't matter, that I didn't need them to understand. And I made peace with that, at least on the surface. But the sense of wholeness I felt now revealed just how much that quiet distance had cost. We all need to be known. Maybe not in every classified detail, but at our core, our values, our purpose, our worth. I had learned to build my identity independent of anyone else's perception, and that had carried me through years of silence. But there was a unique kind of peace in finally being able to share my full self. To be both the daughter and the general, the sister and the strategist. And to have those roles recognized not separately but together. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. So proud to finally be able to brag about both my kids at the officers' wives' luncheon tomorrow. Love you, General. Red heart. I smiled, tapping out a reply. Just don't give away any state secrets, Mom. Some things are still classified. Her response came back instantly. I'll only say you're the most brilliant intelligence officer in the Army. That's not classified. It's just fact.
See you Sunday.
Dad's grilling. The warmth I felt reading her words eclipsed anything a medal could offer. Not because I valued her pride more than professional validation, but because it signaled something more profound. The parts of my life that had long been separate were finally coming together. The journey hadn't been easy. The years of feeling misunderstood had left marks that wouldn't disappear overnight. But tonight, as I unlocked my door, I felt lighter. No longer burdened by the need to keep my worlds divided. Some of our most difficult battles don't come with formal commendations. Sometimes they're fought quietly within ourselves as we strive to stay true to who we are, even when the people closest to us don't fully understand. I had won that battle long before the medals. Not by convincing anyone of my worth, but by refusing to question it. That was the real lesson, that true strength doesn't come from applause or rank, but from knowing your value, even when it's unseen. Recognition is powerful, but it doesn't define you. I am General Aria Sinclair, daughter, sister, officer, leader. I was always all of those things, even when no one was looking.